Hey people, welcome back to the channel. This is a story in which Madara is Naruto's grandfather. He implanted his and Hashirama's cells into Naruto and trained him, which made him extremely strong. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, leave a comment if you want to suggest fanfic. Check the description for credits and support the creator of the story. So let us begin. Chapter 31. It was a scene that was rarely seen within the village of Konoha, Uchiha Naruto walking about the village. He had used the gates to enter the village. Since he left yesterday morning, he never came back to the village. He had spent his night elsewhere wandering about. He had visited different villages during night to see what it was like there. Most of the places he had seen were very quiet. It was hard to believe that the people he had watched drinking and laughing could turn into cold-hearted killers during day. But then again, who was he to judge? The world was like a sleeping beast during the night. There were little of the things that happened during day. But that is not to say that those filled with darkness did not crawl about the night to devour their prey. They were there and did so many things in the dark. He had killed some in the borders of the river country while he was passing by. He could not just watch the vultures continue to do as they pleased. From morning till it was about evening, he had spent his time at the island of Uzushiogakure. It had been a quiet day for him. Well, it was a day to be miserable for him. But it was a little less different from the times of before. He had never ventured across the world just to watch over it. Perhaps only Obito could do what he was doing, since the man could also teleport to wherever he wanted to with his Kamui. He had his own jutsu to use. But it was a little slow. It was not one he could use for fighting. The Flying Thunder God Technique Level 2 was by far the faster jutsu. Although no one could track his movements, the jutsu was still slow. Well, it did not matter anyway. As long he could use it in a way that was pleasing for him, he could not complain much. It was still early in the morning, so there were very little people in the streets of the village. That was why he had even bothered to take a walk around the village. The Ikarakas would be preparing their meals by now. He would wait there while they prepare something for him to eat. He was a little hungry. The water around Uzu had plenty of fish, but fish alone did not do it for him. He wanted something that his gut was used to grinding. What better than having some ramen? Ramen had been his special food from young age. Perhaps it was because it was the only place he could eat freely and without having to overpay anything, that is, if he was allowed to eat. But the ramen at Ikaraku also had a taste about it that he liked. The villagers who were already awake were sure as hell giving him weird and surprised looks. It seemed like they had seen a ghost. Was it so much of a surprise to see him walking around silently with an expressionless face? The blonde did not bother much about though. He just walked towards the ramen stand in peace. Only 2 or 3 seemed to wave at him, the others just went about their business. A simple silent nod was all he gave before walking about his way. Madara used to walk in these very streets after the village had been founded. He walked about the village nodding to some who were nice to him. Sometimes he walked along with Hashirama in these streets. He was not so much bad during those days. But he still had his plans to achieve. Nevertheless, during those days he was able to laugh with Hashirama only. With other people or even children, he remained impassive. He had seen much of the days of a young Konoha in Madara's genjutsu. But when the man had grown older, you could never see him smile. He did smile when they first met. But when the bonds were formed, he stopped smiling and went back to being a bitter old man with huge dreams. Well, that came to an end. Would he follow the same footsteps of his grandfather? Certainly not. There was just no way he would walk the same path. History could not repeat itself. He was the man who defied all odds after all. He was the one to change everything. He would achieve things they thought impossible. Yes, he would go down in history as a man of the impossible. They could call him whatever they wanted. He certainly did not care about titles. But he would see through whatever he wanted. He was Uchiha Naruto, after all. Naruto shook his head slightly. Perhaps Uzumaki Naruto was still alive. He was the only one who could make such proclamations. Very soon, he had arrived at the ramen stand. It was opened, but he knew they had yet to prepare any food. They were probably just cleaning around the place as they prepared for another day at work. Surely when he arrived, they were indeed cleaning up the place. He saw Ayame, and guessed her father was in the kitchen cleaning the mess there and preparing everything that needed to be prepared. When the woman saw him, she smiled warmly, like always. Good morning Naruto, what are you doing here so early? She asked as the blonde took a seat. I came to get ramen, the answer was obvious. But it did not seem like that was what Ayame was asking, but she did not say anything further. Perhaps if she had phrased it in another way, the blonde would have answered. Or he could have just given her a nonchalant shrug. This early? You don't do that often these days. Ayame said, trying to recall the last time Naruto was here at this time. When he had been much younger he could come at this time. Perhaps it was because he did not have much to eat in his home. And during those days just after he was kicked off the orphanage things were a little hard. The blonde was always short on money. But the problem came to stop sometime when he stopped coming here. Days are different. I thought I might start this one with ramen. I have not done that in quite some time. His tone gave away nothing about what he was thinking or feeling. Ayame had expected nothing less. The blonde never gave away his emotions. But she knew that there must have been something to make him come here at this time. Then she remembered, yesterday was his birthday. A sad smile slipped into her face, only for a moment though. She was trying to hide it from Naruto, but he saw it, he just did not say anything about it. Nodding silently, Ayame responded. Well, it is good to see you again, Naruto. Her tone was a little subdued. Naruto picked it quickly, but again, he did not say a word about it. It would be a bothersome task to ask about it. If there was something she wanted to say, she would. Likewise, Ayame, he gave her a small smile, which she returned. I will tell father to prepare your ramen, but it will take some time. He is still preparing some things at the kitchen, it was still early to switch on the stoves. But for Naruto, time did not matter. Her father would even stop doing what he is doing and prepare ramen, specially for the blonde. I will wait. He did not have anywhere to be at this time. He would only go home and rest since it sure was one hell of a night for him. Ayame nodded. I will be right back. She quickly disappeared off to the kitchen to talk to her father. The owner of the stand came to greet the blonde for a few moments before returning to the kitchen. Naruto waited patiently for his ramen to come as he chatted a bit with Ayame. The girl left to the kitchen after a few minutes when her father had called her. She came back with a small bowl of ramen had handed it to him. Father said this should keep you company while he finishes the main meal, she said before heading back to the kitchen to help her father. About 35 minutes later. Sakura was walking at a relatively slow pace towards the hospital. She normally had shifts. In the morning to lunch, today was not any different. Being one of the best medic nin in Konoha, she had a few patients at the hospital since she started working there. Tsunade rarely went to see or heal patients these days since either her or Shizune would handle the matters in the hospital. The Godime had trained them well to be what they were. But Tsunade was not the only teacher she had, Shizune had also trained her. The woman was her senpai. She had so much knowledge and experience in medical ninjutsu than she did. And her chakra control was just flawless. She still had a long way to go. So she may one day surpass both Tsunade and Shizune. Yes, that was her goal. Yesterday had been a rather conflicting day for her, it was not to her only but to her other peers. Well, Sasuke did not seem to be surprised by anything that their senseis were telling them. It seemed like he already knew, so did Shikamaru. But the latter was truly a genius, he could have figured things out long ago. Given that Naruto lived with Sasuke, it would not be surprising if he knew. But Naruto was also a bit secretive about certain things. There are things that he did not mind saying out loud, and there are things he just did not talk about. She could have never guessed that the blonde had been carrying a mountain-tall biju inside his gut when they were still at the academy. It was back then when he was playing to be an idiot. He had really fooled them with that one though. It was a surprise to see him to have changed so drastically. It had also taken her some time to accept that Naruto was not an idiot. Who could have guessed that the loudmouth idiot from the academy was really a Jinchuriki? She certainly did not. But then again, she was pretty much close-minded back then. She did not care about anything that did not have to do with Sasuke. The Raven-head Uchiha was all she cared about. She had to respect Naruto now. After all that he went through because of Konoha, he never went crazy and started killing the villagers. Despite turning out cold, he had not lost his sanity. He was reasonable sometimes, but sometimes he was a straightforward rude asshole. That was not all, he could be a heartless bastard sometimes. The wave had been right all along to call him a hero. She did not see it then, but he was indeed a hero. Kakashi had been told them that Gaara carried the same burden as Naruto, and he'd been a bloodthirsty Jinchuriki before he changed. Naruto may be heartless sometimes, but Kakashi did not put him as a bloody thirsty killer. Funny, other villages could see the hero in Naruto and yet they could not. This village is his home, yet they rejected him. She knew that even now not everyone liked him. She also does not hate him, his attitude just infuriates her. There are so many times that she had thought of going all Chanaro on him. But she knew very well that it would not end well for her. A lot of people felt the same way as she did. If he was a little friendly, he would have more friends, and some people would bother to talk to him. She also knew that some shinobi feared his power and talked much behind his back. Well, the blonde was not one to care about that sort of thing. He would not overreact when someone talked nonsense about him. She certainly would kill someone. Sakura was about to pass through the ramen stand when she saw Naruto. He was eating ramen alone. She decided to invite herself. When she arrived, he did not even turn to face her nor even act like he acknowledged her presence. Good morning, Naruto. She greeted with a smile, but he still did not look at her. Sakura. Naruto responded quietly. She could not see his eyes because she was at his right hand. Naruto's right side of his face was covered with his hair. She could not even see his face. This was a good start, Sakura thought. Still, his tone was just blank as always. She decided to get to the point before the blonde sent her away from him. Kakashi-sensei and the other Jonins told us about your childhood last night. We had gathered for your birthday party. If Sakura was expecting some reaction from him, she got nothing. Naruto did not stop eating nor even twitch or flinch. He just continued eating like she had not said anything. He did that, huh? His tone was still blank. It did not show anything. Sakura could not tell if he was upset or not. He said you would not mind. She paused for a moment to see if the blonde would say anything, but he said nothing. It was as if he was waiting for her to get to the point. I just wanted to say that I am sorry for the way I treated you in the academy. I was very horrible towards you, and I am truly sorry. Her tone seemed to reflect a bit of regret on her actions. Naruto turned to face her. She looked into him. He looked somewhat amused by her apology. She did not think it was funny. But she kept her thoughts to herself. I was under the impression that you were still that annoying child whose world revolved around Sasuke. But it seems I was wrong. You have grown up a bit. With that said, he turned back to his ramen. Sakura stood up and gave the blonde a slight bow. She decided to take his words as a compliment. Thank you for listening me while I speak, Naruto. With that she ran away towards the hospital with a small smile on her face. Uchiha compound. It was a bit of a surprise to him that these people had organized a party for him yesterday. He had missed all that. He had not thought they would go as far as to do something like that. He guessed that Yugao must have been involved in the matter. She must have been the mastermind behind it all. Sasuke would not think of such a thing, but he could help. Zetsu had not come to him the whole of yesterday. He must have understood that he needed some much alone time. It was also good for him that Obito had no decided to show up to ruin his day. He would have killed the man right there if he had bothered to show his face before him. Surely the man would have come just to ruin his day. But he was somewhat glad that he did not show up. With his new jutsu, he was also hard to track. It would not be a surprise if even Zetsu had not been able to track him down, especially when he was in Uzu. A party for him. Ridiculous. He never even dreamt of having won his life, perhaps when he was little after watching the others. But that dream had disappeared because in his birthday, all he had wished for was to be free. Being free had been the greatest wish he could make on his birthday. But that also changed over time. He became free, and realized that the need for a party was not for him. He stopped making wishes. Making wishes was child's play. If he wanted something, he would set things up to get what he wanted. On his birthday, it was just one day he allowed himself to feel, the reason being that this revived and strengthened his conviction about redemption. Naruto got into the house, heading straight to his room. But he stopped when he saw Sasuke already up. The Uchiha was not in the dining table like always. He was sitting down in the living room, alone. The other Uchiha was quick to notice him. "You missed a great party last night," Sasuke stated calmly. His tone was calm, and was not being sarcastic. "I was told there had been a party. I don't know about. Great. It does not matter, anyway, I probably would not have enjoyed it," Naruto responded, standing over the stairway with arms crossed over his chest. He was not much of a people's person. He liked doing business, not partying. You never know unless you try. With older Jonins there, and Yugao-san, you may have had a pleasant time. But we may never know. The raven-head teen seemed to shrug at his last words. It seemed he was not really bothered by the fact that Naruto did not show up at his own party. Perhaps the Uchiha had more worrying matters to deal with. "I guess you right," Naruto responded quietly, still in a blank tone. "If you don't know already, Kakashi told everyone who was at the party about your childhood, in detail. You might find our peers acting a bit differently towards you. But no one seems to hate you for the Kyuubi, not that you would care if they hated you," Sasuke stated, just for Naruto to know what had happened last night. He also knew that the blonde did not like talking about his childhood. But he did not know it was the same when someone was talking about it in his absence. "Sakura informed me earlier. It must have been one hell of a story Kakashi pulled out," Naruto commented on Kakashi telling about his childhood. "You have no idea. He called it the story of the rejected hero," Sasuke said. The man had named Naruto's life that. Well, it was true that Naruto had been the hero that was rejected by Konoha, thus the rejected hero. He would not have thought that Kakashi would name his tale the title though. But it was of little consequence since there was no harm done. The rejected hero. It does have a nice ring to it, Naruto said, clearly amused. Sasuke could tell that the blonde was not mad at the fact that Kakashi had told everyone about his childhood. Or even the fact that the man had made a story out of it. Well, he should have expected it. There was little that could get the blonde worked up. He was the master of self-restraint and keeping his composure. He had never seen the blonde worked up about anything. It certainly does. A bit sad that it is the hard truth though, Sasuke commented looking at Naruto carefully. The blonde gave no outward reaction to his words. It sometimes annoyed Sasuke how the blonde could stay like that. He would have expected something, but there was nothing from the blonde. "Is there anything else?" Sasuke was quiet for a few moments before he responded. It was so much like Naruto to be like this. "No," he said shaking his head slightly. "I will talk to you later. I have to get to my trainees before Guy kills them with his ridiculous training methods. I bet Lee will be with him today." The Uchiha could imagine the two green beasts killing his trainees with their training. They did not just get tired, those two. They could keep his trainees up till night. That is unless they don't lose their consciousness in sheer tiredness. It is necessary for them to be trained by someone like Guy in taijutsu. When they are in the police force, they will have to learn taking down suspects without having to use ninjutsu. Taijutsu is the most effective way of dealing with suspects without raising too much attention, Naruto explained lightly with a wave of his hand. It did not matter to him how hard Guy drove them, as long as they learned something useful at the end of the day, he could not complain about anything. I get the logic in that. I do admit that Guy's training also builds up their endurance, speed and ensures that they ain't not too dependent on chakra. Sasuke responded calmly as he stood up. By this time, Guy would be already at the training grounds. If there was something that the man took seriously, it was training his students. You should have no complaints then. Guy will force some skills into them that will ensure that they have a good foundation and in a few years, they will be elites. You need competent subordinates to do a good job in handling village security. If your subordinates are incompetent, you will also be incompetent. For Uchiha, that is not acceptable. Sasuke sighed inwardly. Not everyone can meet your standards, Naruto. But I agree with you. I will not tolerate incompetent fools in the military force. Sasuke paused for a moment. After Guy is done with them, they will need to be trained in kenjutsu. I can get Kakashi to do it, but he is not as good as Yugao. Will you talk to her? No. It was a simple, no, the blonde gave. Single quote dot 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 single quote. Why? Naruto showed Sasuke his back as he walked up the stairs. Talk to her yourself. I helped you with Guy, I cannot do everything for you. I am sure she will not refuse to help you. Again, Sasuke sighed as he walked away from the house. He needed someone to train those kids some kenjutsu. He was also good with sword play, but he would rather not teach anyone. His methods were only for him. But Yugao and Kakashi could do it. If he got those two to train his future subordinates, they would surely learn something and not be incompetent. Adding to that, there was the training Guy was giving them, it was just perfect. They were being trained by top shinobi who were elites in the fields. After kenjutsu, he would get them to learn kaiden jutsu. The fireball was good for cleaning up things. Each squad would need to have someone who could use the jutsu. There would be no squad without someone who could use a kaiden jutsu. Naruto's room, the sight that greeted him was not one he had been expecting. He had expected to find his room empty. But that was not what greeted him. He knew that Yugao sometimes slept here when he was not here. But with everything to have happened, he thought she would have slept in her own bed. At this time of the morning, he had expected her to be already awake. She was not the kind of person to oversleep. Anbu were trained well, and given that she had been one for years, he would not expect anything less from her. He really needed to sleep though. He had not rested properly after fighting with Nagato. Shaking his head, Naruto went towards his wardrobe and took off his cloak before going towards his bed. He then took off his gloves and placed them on the nightstand before slipping into his bed. Yugao had done nothing but to make some space for him. The blonde did not face her. He looked the other way, but he knew she was not sleeping. I looked everywhere for you yesterday, she said after a few moments. Her tone was calm and unreadable. I was not inside the village, Naruto responded in an even tone. Did Sasuke tell you everything? He did. I thought it would be good if we celebrated your birthday for once. I realized that you never had one before, but since I was here I thought it would be a great change for you to have a new experience. Her tone was subdued as she spoke. Naruto was silent for a few moments. I had other plans. I understand, she said before turning towards him. She then moved on top of him, making him look at her. The action surprised him, but he did not say a word. She gave him a warm smile before kissing him on the lips. Happy birthday, Naruto, she said smiling. I wanted to give you a present last night. But since we have nowhere to go, I guess I can give it to you now. I really wanted to get some rest. But I guess it can't be helped, Naruto thought silently. Ahem, Naruto, Yugao started slowly. Can you promise me something? Her tone was soft, and she was not looking at him. Even if she had been looking at him, it would not have mattered because the blonde had his eyes closed. He had said he wanted to get some rest. She needed to speak to him before that, though. What is it, Yugao? He was not going to agree to anything until he heard what it was. It would not be a wise thing to agree to something without even hearing what it was. He did not think Yugao would be thinking of anything diabolical, he just did not want to make empty promises to her. Next year, on your birthday, if you are going to leave the village, will you take me with you? Sure. He will probably be in Otogakure by the time. Konoha would still be having Sasuke, Jiraiya, and Kakashi. Those three can manage the village in his stead. He doubted he would be Hokage during the time. It was no problem since he was not in a hurry. He would rather have the older generation grow old before he could lead. Good, perhaps we may do something special, she was smiling when she heard him respond. Oh, and another thing, I have already packed my things, so I will be moving in later on today. Is there going to be any problem? No. It was a simple response. He had been expecting her to say something like that. She already lived in here, so there was nothing that was going to be changed. He did not have to move to another house within the compound since he already had a house in Otogakure. This will change some things between us. There is also another issue that we have brought up but never talked much about, and it is very important that we do. Her tone became firm as she spoke, but she still did not look at Naruto. What is it? I am not your only woman. You also have the Mizukage, who is your fiancé, and I am just your girlfriend. And you have yet to take me to her as I have requested. By this time, her tone had changed again, it had become blank. Is there going to be a problem between you and Mei? Naruto asked. His tone had lost its blankness. Perhaps it was because he was close to sleeping. No, but for things to work out well, we have to sit down, the three of us, and talk, soon. That can be arranged, soon. You said that the last time I told you I wanted to see Mei, Yugao said, sighing. It had been a few days since they had the talk and Naruto was no saying anything about it. Naruto sighed. I am not looking forward to that kind of conversation, he muttered. But I guess it can't be helped. Good. I am glad we got that sorted out, it was really bothering me. I am going to take a shower and leave you to your rest, Yugao said, getting out of the bed nicely so not to shake the blonde next to her. It seems like he was just waiting for her to shut up before he could doze off. He must have really been tired, and she took some of his energy again. Do that, was the blank reply from Naruto. You know, I am starting to think that things went smoothly because you wanted to get rid of me, Yugao said, staring down at the blonde. She knew he could feel her stare even though he was not looking at her. Maybe. Jackass, Yugao muttered, walking towards the bathroom. She was certain that he said that on purpose. Later, Hokage office. The scene where you have Jiraiya and Tsunade sitting within her office talking peacefully was not a strange one, especially these days. The two Sanins have been spending much time talking together lately. Perhaps it is because Jiraiya always has something to report since there was a lot happening within the shinobi world. Things were turning out badly, and it seems that if things are not handled correctly, there would be another war. Jiraiya certainly did not want to be in another war. The last two wars he had been in were enough. This younger generation was not ready for war. It would kill them if they saw what war could really do. He just hoped that it could be avoided at all costs. But at the moment it seemed highly likely. The people that could ignite the war were not very much listening to someone. He just hoped that Naruto could turn things differently for the sake of the world. But that was not what the Sanins were talking about. Where were you yesterday, Jiraiya? Tsunade asked curiously. She had seen the man in the morning, but after that, he just disappeared without a trace. She did not know where he had gone to. Nobody was able to find him. Well, she did not look that hard. But it would not have mattered anyway. Jiraiya was like Orochimaru in this regard. He could disappear and no one would know where he was. I was outside the village. Not too far from it though. I had much to think about, the Toad Sage responded calmly. It seemed that he had much to think of yesterday given the look on his face. Tsunade was able to see that it had to do with Naruto. I see, she said. It had been his 17th birthday yesterday. Yugao had prepared a special gathering, but he did not show up. He was not anywhere in the village. He only came back early morning. The poor woman looked for him everywhere, but she could not find him. Well, at least something beneficial was done last night. What? Jiraiya knew that Yugao had prepared a party for Naruto. He had gotten the feeling that the blonde would not show up given everything he has suffered on his birthdays. He had been proven right. But he was still not aware that something had been done last night. He had only come back recently and he had not spoken to anyone other than Tsunade. Kakashi told Naruto's peers about the Kyuubi, in his childhood. He told them everything that he knew, even things that other Jonins did not know about it. Tsunade responded with a small smile on her face. She was actually happy that Kakashi had done something like that. It was a bit risky since he did not know how they would react, but the reaction was good. He did that, huh? Ironic. He gave the same response that Naruto gave to Sakura when told about that. I had a feeling he may do that one day. It was obvious that Naruto would not say a word about it. I know that Naruto did not keep quiet because of fear. This may be a good thing. Yes, Tsunade responded with a firm nod. If things go well, Naruto may have the respect of his peers. In the long run, they may form some bonds with him. As much as I do hate to admit it, in terms of military power, Naruto is someone we cannot hope to lose. For the safety and future of the village his power is needed. You and I are not going to be able to reach our peak forever, and you as well as I know that Naruto's generation is not strong as our generation, nor Kakashi's. Jiraiya nodded in agreement. I have to admit you do have a point there. If they were the ones leading this village, I have no doubt the leaf would not be the strongest, the Toad Sage sighed. Perhaps Naruto was right, I may have to start training the younger generation. Minato would probably come back to life just to tell you he was proud if that happened, Tsunade snorted. Jiraiya glared. I am sorry, I just could not help myself. A few years ago after Minato died, you swore you would never train any students. I said I would never take an apprentice. And I was just saying that because losing Minato hurt. I did not want to suffer the pain of watching another apprentice die. But I will not be taking an apprentice this time, it is just students I will be taking. He really seemed like he was going to do it. Doing something like that will require much of your time. Who will take charge of your spy network? It seems to be very precious to you, Tsunade said. Yes, it was indeed true. The man was proud of his spy network. And mostly he gave his spy network as a reason not to do something. I will figure something out. And besides, even if I am taking students, I don't have to be with them each time. There are things that they have to do on their own. Tsunade nodded, but said nothing further about the matter. What were you thinking about with regards to Naruto? Jiraiya was silent for a few moments. I failed him, I failed Minato and Kushina. Over the past years I have been trying to understand him. I now understand bits of him. I know there is nothing I can do to make up for my failures. But I don't want to live in regrets. I am going to trust Naruto. I may never be his godfather, but the least I can do is trust and support him. Being hung up on the past won't change anything, but looking ahead for the future will change at least something. Tsunade stared. Even though I said Naruto is someone we need for military power, if things turn for the worse, we may have to, that thing, we discussed. A solemn look spread across Jiraiya's face. I hope it does not come up to that. If Kushina was still alive, she would kill us if we did something like that. Before Tsunade could respond, Naruto appeared in the office. Interesting. Before anything could happen, Tsunade spoke. I wanted to speak with you before the meeting, but it appears that we won't have the time. The clan heads are probably waiting for us. Council chambers. As Tsunade had thought, the clan heads were already sitting down in the chambers. They seemed to have been waiting for them to arrive in the chambers. Naruto saw the two advisors of the Hokage and looked at the Godime as they walked towards the others. I thought you would have retired them already. They are useless in these meetings and all they do is to object everything the children say. It was the Sandaime who hired them as his advisors. He is dead, so should their job. Naruto, you do know that they can hear you, Tsunade said in the same tone as Naruto. She did not bother to lower her tone so that the said people could not hear her. She did not give a damn if they could hear her. That is beside the point, Naruto responded coolly. He did not care about it. They knew he did not like them and they did not like him. He had not hidden that fact from anyone. He does have a point, you know, Jiraiya added, agreeing with Naruto. The Sandaime might have hired them. But their experience is useful. I cannot just shrug of their experience as nothing. Aside from their experience, their only use is to give me headaches, Tsunade responded. Surely, they used to bother her a lot. But lately they have calmed down a bit. They no longer bother her as they used to, perhaps it was because Danzo was no longer with them. Then if that is your belief, you should have them in home and call them when you need them. This meeting is for those who have some power in the village, not advisors. If I find them next time, I will remove them myself, Naruto said as he broke away from Tsunade, walking towards his seat. The Godime merely shook her head and went to take her own seat. Sorry to keep you waiting, she said to the others, specifically to the clan heads. Children of today, Homura said shaking his head. No respect for their elders whatsoever, Koharu nodded agreeing with him. But sadly, no one commented on what he had just said. Shall we begin with this meeting already? I have other things to do, Sume said with impatience. Tsunade cleared her throat to get everyone's attention. The shinobi world is changing drastically, tensions are high everywhere. If we don't handle things wisely, we may find ourselves caught up in another war. Another war. Are you sure about this, Hokage-sama? While I do know that a war can break out of stupid things, I do not believe that we could be heading to another war, especially with the peace treaties we signed with both Iwagakure and Kumogakure. You should know by now that treaties can be disregarded in the blink of an eye. Inoichi-san, Naruto responded looking straight at the blonde head of the Yamanaka clan. It was a naive way of thinking to believe that villages would not attack because of an alliance struck with the village. Naruto is right, Inoichi. Have you forgotten that Sunagakure attacked us even though we were allied with it? The village was the only of the Great Five we had close relations with, and yet they still invaded us, Jiraiya spoke in a calm tone while sitting down. He was in the seat that used to host Danzo. Normally, he would be standing behind Tsunade, but since there was an available seat, he took it. We do have someone to thank for most of the tensions, and we all know whose stupidity and arrogance it was that has caused the elemental nations to become like this, Koharu stated, eyes narrowed at someone. Everyone knew who the woman was referring to, but no one voiced it aloud. It does not matter, Tsunade cut in with a firm tone. But I don't see what Naruto has done to provoke other cages. I don't ever recall him killing Iwa or Kumo shinobi. If those two threatened war, it will be because of their own reasons. Are you saying that Iwagakure and Kumo are our enemies, Hokage-sama? Shikaku questioned looking straight at the Godime. That is exactly what I am saying. Sunagakure will never attack us, Gaara is honest and loyal. We have established a good relationship with them. They would not dare threaten to attack us again, they do not even have the power to go against us, Tsunade stated in confidence that Gaara would never betray her trust. With what she has seen of the Jinchuriki, it was that he was not one to betray. He was not a deceitful person. Kurigakure is still weak from the civil war, and we have just signed an alliance with them. Their Kage is also soon to be married to Naruto, he is also a hero of the village. We can rule them out of any attack, picking a fight with us would only mean their destruction, Jiraiya added after his former teammate had spoken. We only signed a peace treaty with Iwa to end the Third Shinobi World War, and our relations with them never improved. We have only stayed out of their way while they did the same with us, Chusa stated, as he recalled the Third Shinobi World War. They really did make a name for themselves during that war. But many shinobi did lose their lives. I have also received from my contacts that Iwa has been amassing its army over the years to recover and strengthen itself after its losses in the Third War. Kumo has been on lockdown over the past days. Things will only heat up when they know of Naruto's latest activities. Jiraiya said referring to Naruto's fight with Pain. The landscape had taken a hit, one will be automatically be fearful of whoever made that mess. It seems that we have the power to win if a war does break out. The matter would be to find a way to avoid it since we don't want our children to face the horrors of war, Hiyashi stated, earning nods from other head clans. We know what war is, and you can all agree with me that our children are not ready for it. I would rather we do anything to avoid it. And I mean anything. I was thinking along the same lines with Tsunade. But we may have to take drastic measures to avoid it, Jiraiya said looking at Naruto. We have told you about Otogakure and some of you do not agree with what Naruto did. But you do see the benefit the village will bring to Konoha. We have already sent a letter to the daimyo so he could make it official over the extension of the Fire Country. It is not that I don't agree with it, it is just that other villages won't like it. But in this case, it seems that only those who don't like us will hate the idea. Kiri, Suna and our other allies will not have a problem with it since it will benefit them, Sum stated. The problem will now be our enemies fighting over control the village. Once they know that Oto is in our fold, they will increase their efforts and will most likely fight us too. Isn't it that Oto does not have the military power to protect itself? Shikaku questioned looking at Naruto. Konoha does not have to worry about Oto. I was not stupid enough to think that something like this will not happen. I have made preparations to deal with enemies. I will not request any help from Konoha, perhaps I may take Sasuke. That should make things acceptable, no. Are you saying that even when Kumo and Iwa attack simultaneously, you will not need Konoha's aid? That is what I am saying, Naruto stated. It seems to me that the belief that Oto does not have the military power to protect itself is not quite true, Shikaku said. Naruto merely smiled. Nothing can be hidden from a Nara, he said. Despite all the power you can offer this village, we will not allow your actions to get our shinobi killed, Koharu stated looking straight at Naruto. We will still have to gather the Kage, Mizukage and the leader of Oto to begin talks and see how we will see things through. She had already talked with Jiraiya to ensure that if war broke out, they would stay neutral, and so would Sunagakure. But that option was only available if things got worse than they were now. That is a good idea, Tsunade-sama. We will be able to know where each village stands should a war break out. Inoichi stated. But I would like it if we did everything to avoid war. Jiraiya looked at Naruto curiously. He knew that Iwa's army was charging towards Oto. He would not bring it up now, but he had already told Tsunade about it. He would have to leave the village after this meeting had head towards the borders of Iwa. He had no doubt that Naruto knew about it and would probably not allow them to get close to his village. He was curious to see how the blonde would deal with it. He had to watch this happen. When it does happen, things will surely turn worse. He just hoped that nothing even worse than Naruto destroying Iwa's army happened. Hokage Monument. Later that day the monument of the Hokages was always quiet and peaceful. It was hard to believe that this place has been in existence since and before Konoha was even born. It had been here when Madara and Hashirama were still brats. This place had been the place the two friends made their settlement. And today, the village stood. Madara had named this village. They had just started it without a name, but afterwards, Madara had named this village Konohagakure. If it had not been for that cursed Tobirama, Madara may have been the first Hokage or the second. But that fool and his trust issues just did not trust Uchiha. He never liked Madara to begin with. Not that there was much to like, but the fool was the one responsible for most things. His screwed up way of viewing things had turned things into another matter. He wondered how a man like Tobirama could be the younger brother of a free-spirited Hashirama. The day had been well for him. After meeting with the clan heads, he had gone back to the Uchiha compound to do other things. But Sasuke had not been present, so he settled for lying down. He would need to test out his Rinnegan's power a bit soon. Well, at least he would be dealing with Iwagakure shinobi. He could test some things on them. Yes, they would prove to be wonderful lab rats. Tomorrow would be a good day though. It was a bit annoying that he would have to sit with both Mei and Yugao to talk. Yugao did not seem to like the idea of sharing him with another woman. He had even noticed when he told her he would be leaving for the night. The first question she had asked was if he was going to sleep in Kurigakure. He had not been planning to sleep there. He was planning to get some sleep in Otogakure. But anything was possible. He responded to Yugao in that fashion. She did not seem to accept his response very well. Perhaps she knew that Mei was very straightforward with what she wanted and would probably have him sleep in her bed for the night. The very thought seemed to make Yugao a bit irate. But he did not indulge her. He would rather not start things he did not fully understand. If she had problems, she would sort them out with Mei when he took her to meet with the Mizukage. Sasuke appeared, in a flash and sat down beside the blonde. He was quiet for a few moments but before he could speak, Naruto started. I nearly left this place since you were keeping me from my other plans, the blonde stated. You are planning on going somewhere? Sasuke asked with a curious face. Yes, I have to talk to Mei about something before heading out to Oto. Couldn't you have done this during day or tomorrow? It was already dark. Who waited till dark to handle some matters? Well, perhaps Naruto was doing it because he had a teleportation jutsu. With his space-time ninjutsu, he could go anywhere he wanted without having to travel much distances. But he knew that opening those portals had to tax the blonde a lot in chakra. But given the amounts of chakra Naruto had, it would not seem to be a problem. I could have, but it is better this way. Sasuke merely shook his head, not wanting to hear anything further. He doubted he would even understand what the blonde would say. It was better left unasked. Remind me in 2 weeks to give you 10 Anbu level shinobi who will help you start your work effectively with the military police. For now, while you train those children, you have no military force. But I will hand you the shinobi so that you can work. He had removed all of White Zetsu's clones in the village. He took them all to the hideout for study. He wanted to study them further because something had picked up his curiosity lately. And it would not do him any good if he kept relying on Zetsu for intel. He would have to do with other means. Removing the Zetsu clones would leave space for Sasuke to work on his own. There would be no Zetsu to track down everything within the village. This left Sasuke with all the work to do instead of being fed all the information by Zetsu. Where will you get them? They are many men that have been training in secret. The 10 I will give to you will be from an elite group. They were supposed to be in Oto's elite force, but I can spare 10, Naruto responded coolly. Who will they be loyal to? And isn't Tsunade going to ask questions? It does not matter if she asks questions or not. They will be loyal to Uchiha. Do not worry though, they will listen to your orders. They are very obedient children, especially when their leader knows what he is doing, Naruto stated eyeing Sasuke at the corner of his eyes. Sasuke nodded, and became silent for a few moments. You don't suffer from damaged eyesight because of overuse of the Mangekyo Sharingan. I have only been using it for a short time, and I have started seeing that using the Mangekyo damages the eyesight. For someone who uses his Mangekyo often, you should be blind by now, unless you have the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. What is your question, Sasuke? Sasuke shook his head slightly. I do not have a question, he said. The fact that you gained the Mangekyo means you lost someone precious to you. And the eternal Mangekyo means you had another relative in the Uchiha clan. I just can't figure who you could be related to. I have looked through all records and I still can't find anything. Don't bother looking any further. There is nothing in records that you will find, Naruto responded calmly. You sound so confident. But I guess I should not be surprised by this. It is not a matter of confidence. The fact is just that there was nothing ever recorded about my relations to the Uchiha clan. It appeared that his grandmother had been bent on screwing Madara that she did not even name him in anything after they parted ways. Naruto, where do you see our clan in the future? Do you think more Itachis will be born? Do you think that this village will always force us to make sacrifices like with Itachi? Naruto was silent for a few moments, but before he could respond, a plague appeared in a swirling vortex. Sasuke remained calm because Naruto did so. The blonde merely narrowed his eyes at the plague before looking back into Konoha. Sasuke could read that he knew the person, but did not seem to like him very much. He noticed that the man was wearing an Akatsuki cloak and a spiral mask with a lone Sharingan on his right. The eye raised questions within his head. But he did not voice his thoughts. The remaining 3 Uchihas have all gathered in one place. Isn't this pleasant, Naruto? Obito questioned looking at the back of the blonde. The remaining 3. Does it mean that this guy is also an Uchiha? Sasuke thought inwardly, looking between Naruto and the masked man. What do you want, Obito? Naruto questioned. Sasuke was sure he had heard that name somewhere. If he was not mistaken, he had heard Kakashi say that name. But he was not going to jump into any conclusions. He would play it safe for now. Oh. You seem rather hostile today, Naruto. Is it because of Sasuke? It is just annoying having to see you again and again, knowing that I want to kill you, soon. But you are indeed right, I don't like your presence before Sasuke. I would have not liked for you appear before him like this, Naruto responded with a small shrug of his shoulder. Sasuke was not surprised to hear Naruto tell the man that he wanted to kill him so bluntly. Sasuke had no doubts that the blonde wanted to do that, but that raised a question, why? You did tell Conan about me, I just thought I would return the favor. How thoughtful of you, it sounded sarcastic. Well then, introduce yourself to our fellow Uchiha. But do it quick, and know that the next time you appear before me, I will kill you. I have everything prepared for dealing with you. Obito ignored most of what the blonde had said. Who I am does not really matter. But if you are curious, I am Uchiha Obito, the true leader of the Akatsuki. Naruto and I were trained under the same person. I was trained before him, before I left on my own. I guess I should tell you who Naruto really is. Obito paused for a moment. He is the son of a mistake, a rejected child of Uchiha Madara. That makes him the grandson of Uchiha Madara. His mother is the rejected Uchiha. My mother, a rejected child. Naruto was not the least amused. His Rinnegan was already activated. He was still calm, but the atmosphere around him was not. By tomorrow this time, you will be dead. Now disappear before I change my mind. Oh. It seems I have struck a nerve. I will see you soon, Sasuke. With that, the man disappeared in another swirling vortex. Sasuke looked straight at Naruto with an expressionless face. He noticed the new eyes he had not seen. What is with your eyes? You know the story of the Sage of Six Paths. He had a dujutsu called the Rinnegan, this it. Naruto responded. He was not going to give Sasuke a lecture on how it came to be. That would be exposing too much secrets. Sasuke did not need to know how it had happened. He just had to know that he had the dujutsu and that was it. By the tone Naruto used, Sasuke knew he was not going to get any more than Naruto wanted, and what the blonde had already said was enough. He would have to search for information about the Rinnegan though. But he was sure that Naruto awakened the eyes recently. He had not seen them from the blonde before. But this just means more power. So added to the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and Mokuton, you also have the Rinnegan. When you reach your prime, you will be nothing but a monster. That may be so. But then again, I won't be the only monster to have ever lived. Madara had as much power as I had, yet Hashirama could defeat him, Naruto responded, not denying that he may become a monster in power. But if things became peaceful, his power may just become useless. So is it true that you are the grandson of one of Konoha's founders and the strongest man in the Uchiha history? Sasuke asked. No, rather he demanded with a stern face. He was going to get the answers he needed for the blonde. This was big and he ought to be told about it. That is true, Naruto responded smoothly. As Obito has said, I was trained by Madara a few years ago. You may be wondering how come he was alive at that time. To answer your question, he had found a way to cheat death. He is dead now. As for Obito, he is Kakashi's former teammate. He is the one who gave your sensei his Sharingan. He sacrificed himself for Kakashi, and thought to have died. But Madara saved him. He turned out cold when his girlfriend died and became involved with the Akatsuki. I will tell you about the goal of the Akatsuki some other time. He paused as he stood up. Obito is the one who caused the Kyuubi to attack the village 17 years ago. He was only seen by Minato who fought him. I will take my leave now. He was gone after that. Sasuke was sure that no one had been listening to them, for if there had been someone eavesdropping, Naruto would not have said anything. But these new discoveries enlightened him on some of the things he had been in the dark about. He was sure Kakashi would have a mental breakdown if he knew what his former friend had been doing recently. To avoid any of that from happening, Sasuke decided that he was not going to tell the Jonin about it, for now at least. But the fact that Naruto was related to Uchiha Madara did not settle well with him. There was nothing good that was ever painted about the legendary Uchiha. He started well with Konoha and then betrayed the village. Who is to say that Naruto won't do the same? He was trained by the man after all. It would also cause much trouble if it got out that Naruto was the grandson of Madara. But given this, he could understand that why Naruto kept this a secret. However, he had a problem with secrets. They did nothing but cause destruction when they out. This was one that would also cause much destruction. He knew very well how Konoha people thought. If they were not wary of Naruto, they will become wary of him when it comes out, and even more to that, they might hate and fear him, like they did before. This was all becoming such a mess. He just hoped that things did not get worse than this. If they did, there would be some major decisions to be taken. Kirime sighed as she threw herself into her couch. She was really tired today. Her days have been ending like these recently. It was very much hard being the Mizukage without much support of terms her job. She had people supporting her, but she did not have the proper assist. This forced her to do almost everything. And for a village that was recovering from a civil war, there was certainly much work to be done. Well, at least it was not as bad as before when she had just accepted the role of Mizukage. During those days, she could even work the whole night while others slept. The ones who actually stayed awake were her personal guards who were always watching her. But she was the one doing all the hard work. It was tiring. It was also a bit lonely at home when she came back from work. There was no one waiting for her. In her younger days, it was not always like this. She had parents who loved her. Every time she came back home, she always found her mother at home. She always had a smile on her face. It was never lonely at home. She grew up well, but then later the Civil War started. Her parents were lost, and she was left alone. Life was cruel. She fought for the liberation of her village of those who still had their families, while she had nothing. She had fought for nothing but the love for her home. Some people today are probably with their families enjoying dinner with warm smiles and laughter. But she was all alone in this huge house. Her village could rejoice, in safety. She felt no regrets though. She did not resent those who enjoyed their time with their families while she did not. She was happy for them. She had her time with her parents and knew what it was like to be loved. She had experienced it all. It was now time to let the others experience it. As long as this village was safe and enjoyed peace, her heart would never be empty. Her greatest dream was seeing this village become a force to be reckoned with again. She did not want this village to rise again to become powerful only, but to lead a revolution of peace. This was her home. She did not want it to experience any more bloodshed than it had already. But still, she felt lonely when times came like this. That is not a welcoming look, a voice she clearly recalled spoke. She snapped out of her thoughts as she looked at Naruto. She had been so lost in her thoughts that she did not sense him. Because it was him, her Anbu did not alert her. She could understand, and the blonde might have just teleported here. I almost turned away just by seeing the look on your face. Mei did not hide her smile. She was happy that he was here. He had shown up at the right time. She sat up and motioned for him to sit next to her. The blonde did so without complaining. Why would you do something like that? Don't you care about your fiancé? Naruto ignored the second question and only answered the first. For fear of having to indulge you on whatever that was bothering you, he responded calmly. Ah, well, you are going to have to suck it up because I will force you to talk to me about these issues. Her sweet tone clearly suggested that she was not kidding. It seemed that she would force the blonde into talking about issues he did not wish to talk about. Naruto did not let his mind wonder how she would go around into forcing him to be submissive. Perhaps getting into relationships at this time was not the best of choice, Naruto muttered with a sigh. He still maintained that they would only hinder him in his plans. Having to focus on emotions and his plans would confuse things and the result of both would not be perfect. Mei ignored his muttering. What brings you here? Not that I am not happy to see you here, but I am curious, she smiled. Did you just miss your fiancé? Yugao wants to talk to you. I will bring her here in the next days, the blonde responded blandly, looking straight at Mei. I see, Mei responded quietly. She did not look too surprised. It seemed that she had been expecting the other woman to make such a request. If it had taken some time, she would have made the request herself. You were expecting this, Naruto said looking at her. Carefully. Mei nodded. It is not surprising. If you were more knowledgeable about these things, you would have brought us together so we could talk long ago. There are certain things that are gone have to be said and agreed on. No one will be happy if Yugao and I end up hating each other. Since that is settled, I will take my leave, Naruto said standing up, but Mei quickly got hold of his hand. Don't go, stay with me. Chapter 32, Monster. God. The sage, you are leaving, it was not a question, but an observation. Mei was looking at Naruto who was getting dressed, he had already taken a shower before that. It was still early in the morning, she was in no hurry to go to work. She had thought he would at least stay for breakfast. But a woman was not going to get everything she wanted. How disappointing. Yes, I have 2 problems to deal with today, they should be dealt with by the end of the day. For that to happen, I need some time to meditate before looking to dealt with the, Naruto responded quietly. He had told Obito that he would not see the end of today. He would hunt the man down and torture him. He also had to deal with Iwa Shinobi. They will be good for Janua pigs though. Ah, so much for a lovely morning, Mei heaved a sigh as she got out of bed. She looked at her blonde, it would have been a little better if he pretended to check her out. But he never makes the effort. Sometimes she wondered if he really was normal. What do you have to deal with? I have to kill a nuisance and test something with Iwa's army headed towards Otogakure. Naruto responded so casually, that you would not guess to think he was actually talking about killing someone. More to that, Mei knew that the army was surely going to see some impossible things. Iwagakure is planning an attack on Otogakure. I had thought the Tsuchikage would do something like that. It seems he has beat the Raikage to it since I have not heard anything about him. I have no doubt that A is aware of Ohanki's army heading towards Oto, Mei responded not too surprised about the matter. He is aware of this. He must be waiting to see how Iwagakure will do. Naruto responded calmly. Jiraiya too had to know of this, so the Raikage was also aware. The man would not do anything until he could see the battle between Oto and Iwa. Too bad he was not going to get it. Iwa would face an immovable mountain and that mountain would crush them. You know this will raise the tensions that already exists. Iwa and Kuma will all think that Konoha is becoming too strong. They will feel threatened. Konoha already has allies in Suna and Kiri, Mei stated looking straight at Naruto. There is nothing to worry about. I will handle everything, Naruto responded with a small wave of his hand. He had finished dressing up by now. He walked towards Mei, and kissed her on her forehead. The next time I appear it will be with Yugao. Mei smiled warmly. You know, I could get used to this, she said in a sweet tone. Naturally, Naruto looked at the woman with an impassive expression for a moment. But his lips twitched into a small smile. But he did not say anything, though. He just disappeared. It sure feels different from when he was still a jackass. Well, he still is, he is just getting a little better with other people, May muttered to herself with a soft smile. A question sneaked into her mind that made her smile. What if these was all just a phase? She had no doubt that there was some kindness in Naruto's mind. Or perhaps she just misunderstood something in him as kindness. May shook her head, ridding of the troubling thoughts. Since she was already up, she may as well take a shower and resume the usual order. 3 hours later, Otogakure, this place has the kind of quietness that attracts me, Naruto said, loud enough for everyone close to him to hear him. But there was no one close to him as he spoke those words. There was little activity within this palace, this makes this place much more tolerable than other places. It was surely a place for him to dwell. He walked into the office that housed Gurren with his natural look on his face. But he was surely calm given all the meditation he had been going through for the past 3 hours. Naruto, good, we have been trying to get hold of you. Zetsu has not been appearing here over the past days and we have enemy alert coming towards us, Karen stated looking straight at the blonde. But by your presence here, I guess you already know of the problem, Gurren stated. She knew that the blonde would be here because he knew of the impending problem. It was a bit of a relief to see the blonde. There was no way to get hold of him. That had brought her to think that she really needs something that could connect her with him. But still, it was a bit unusual for Zetsu to disappear for a while. He was always checking up now and then. But this time, he had not stepped a foot into her office. I know of the problem, Naruto responded as he took a seat. How do you suggest we handle this? Otogakure cannot protect itself from the army Iwa has heading towards us. And the special corps won't be here for about a week. The normal shinobi are still deep within their training, Gurren spoke, in a firm tone. It seemed that she had grown attached to this village than he had thought. The thought that another village may attempt to crush her village seems to be putting her on edge. Naruto did not comment on it though. I will deal with it. You just have to continue with the normal order of things, Naruto spoke, with a wave of his hand. That said it, the case was closed. Have any of the projects Zetsu brought been started, yet? No, Gurren shook her head. We have still been sorting out a few things, and how we are going to finance everything. We may own a lot of business, but they don't make billions in a month. Financing the projects would take much of Oto's funds, and in this state, I would rather not have that. We are at a critical moment that we cannot allow anything to go wrong. Everything needs to go perfectly. If things are not handled well, we may find ourselves in deep trouble, she explained carefully so not to offend Naruto since he was the one who planned for the projects. With the funding currently available, we can only start building, expanding the shinobi quarters. Anbu quarters have already been completed, so has the special corps quarters. The residence of shinobi has been built, but it is not enough to accommodate all the men we have spread across the elemental nations, Karen added holding a file closely. Whatever that she was holding seemed to be very dear to her. Zetsu had left some details in the reports he gave him. It seems having to limit his reliance on Zetsu was a good thing. He could see that without him, he would be totally lost. Karen's department will have to wait. The research building will be moved somewhere. I imagine that the building for hosting guests, and your research facilities, would be the ones requiring much funding given the equipments each would need. Gurren nod. The research facility would cost a lot of money. The technological equipments that Karen is planning to have from the snow country cost a lot of money. And her own personal lab will be demanding, financially to equip. There is also the fact that a huge portion of the facility will be built underground, she explained lightly, with eyes slightly narrowed towards the red-haired Uzumaki girl. To be able to conduct groundbreaking experiments and research, I need all that I need. Karen defended herself in a firm tone, she sent a slight glare to the other woman. Your needs will leave the village bankrupt. I have shown you our financial structure. I saw it and there is enough finances. You just want to use the money for expanding the village since it seems that more people want to live in here. I want extend because when people come here, they will have to buy the land. And I don't want to do something like that. Leasing outstanding buildings will ensure that we keep the land and continue to receive money. No one will buy much land and start to become brave enough to challenge our authority, Gurren explained, now glaring down at Karen. But if we sell, we get quick funds and all the projects can proceed without any problems, Karen argued. If Naruto was amused, he did not show it. Gurren does have a good point, and her reason carries more weight. What? Both Karen and Gurren spoke at the same time. And they both had different reasons. To add to that, Gurren is the leader of this village and has done remarkably well to get this village where it is. She does what is best for her child, while you are more worried about research, Naruto added, earning a betrayed look from Karen and a grin from Gurren. How could you? I thought we were family. Naturally, Naruto merely shrugged. Nothing has already been decided, yet. Gurren, you can leave a land that will be put for sale. The land of sound is huge, but you can also build houses for the purpose of leasing them. What of the sound daimyo? Now that I think of it, I last heard of him when Orochimaru was still alive. Gurren said in a thoughtful look. She had been used to doing everything she wanted without having to worry since Orochimaru owned this place. The sound has no daimyo. There will only be one leader of this land. When it is included as part of the land of fire, it will be remained again to the land of rice fields. You are going to have this land under the fire country? Gurren asked, showing her surprise in the move. Naruto shook his head. I never said that. I said it will be part of, not under. The fire country will have no control over it, he explained lightly. Karen, if you were listening to me, you would have heard that I said your facilities will be moved. Where to? Uzu, I was thinking of having you move there, but it seems that you really want to be like Orochimaru. That is not to say that you won't be moving into the island. You will still do that, and it will be your home. Aside from being your home, it will be used for research and experiments. Yes, the Uzumaki exclaimed loudly. She almost fell off her seat. An island all for myself to do whatever I want. This is truly a dream come true, she wiped a tear off her left eye. I was planning on moving into this palace and making it my home. But you have made it your home, have you not, Gurren? The woman gave a slight nod. I have to change my plans again, since I had planned for you to leave with Karen in Uzu. But it seems that this is your home. You will remain in charge of this village. I will build myself something in the Uchiha compound. Isn't it still inside of Konoha? The Uchiha compound is secluded from the rest of the village. This makes it living there tolerable and it is no infested with Anbu. The compound is a holy ground. It is unlike any other places within Konoha. However, it will not be my home. I will build myself a majestic palace in the sky. Naruto paused for a moment. You should begin making plans for Uzu. But you will have to see it first. I will take you there, soon. I will be in charge of this land. Karen in Uzu, what of you? Gurren questioned looking straight at the blonde. She was indeed curious to what he planned on doing. He was giving them places to rule, she had thought he would take over her soon. There is much that I have to do. And Konoha still needs to be repaired, if it is willing. Besides, I would rather not bore myself with the kind of work you do. Naruto gave a light response to the question. Uzu will require much work to do. But you will just have to build living quarters and the research facility. There are other projects in here can be stopped. You will only build the structure and equip your own lab, we will see about the rest afterwards. Before I forget, I received a letter from the cage. He wishes to speak with me, Gurren stated carefully. Speak to him. You have shown that you are a capable leader, you no longer need my permission to do the job of the leader, Naruto spoke. Gurren smiled in appreciation. Thank you, she said. Naruto shrugged, again. You may also have to speak with Konoha, the blonde stated. Oto is not the only village in this country. Gurren send each village leader a message to inform them who leads this country. Gurren nodded. This country will not be remained the land of rice fields only, it will be named, the Imperial Kingdom of Rice Fields. Oto will be its capital, and you will be charge on the whole country as well as the capital. Imperial Kingdom. I like the sound of that, Karen stated with a small smile. If I can get the other villages within the country to follow me, I can make them prosper like this place. Gurren added, smiling. Naruto was not oblivious to the fact that Gurren presented her words in a way that sounded like she was the one to make everything possible. Things will become messy from now on. But don't allow it to affect your work. I will handle all enemies while you continue to ensure that this country thrives. He was gone after that. He did not see the huge satisfied smiles on the woman he was speaking to. Looks like we all get what we want, Gurren stated with a grin on her face. Naruto praised you more than once, which itself is a miracle. And he also gave you free reign in this country. And I got an island, and get to build my own research facilities. Yes, I am happy. Karen added with a smile. What do you mean, facilities? Gurren asked with narrowed eyes. I only know of a facility. Not facilities. And if you don't tell me everything, I might give you little funding. If you have forgotten, I will remind you, Naruto gave me free reign over everything in this country. Karen glared. Later Fang country, the army from Iwagakure had marched into the country and were moving close to the borders of the Sound. But it would take some time to get there given their pace. It would be foolish to spend all their energy in running towards the battlefield. If they lost all energy on the way, what would they fight with? Going into the battlefield without energy would only lead to their defeat. They were not expecting much of a challenge though. If intel they had been given was correct, it would be an easy job to defeat Oto and claim victory. The village had no military power to protect itself. Their leader was impressive, but it was nothing special or anything that would bring about fear to them. They would not become overconfident though. Becoming overconfident would only lead to arrogance, and that would surely be their downfall. Halt! The man leading the pack yelled, causing all men to stop in their tracks. He had seen a black hole open just in front of them. He did not know what it was, but they could not avoid it, hence he had stopped his men. What is it? Another asked, looking at the portal carefully. It was not every day that space was ripped apart in front of you. It was not something normal to be seeing. It looks like a portal, one muttered. Just after that, Naruto appeared from the portal before it closed. He had slowed his appearance considerably to make a good entrance. He had never tried it before, but he just thought making it a bit dramatic would make things interesting a bit. He narrowed his eyes at the hundreds of men in front of him with arms folded across his chest. He gazed unto them in his iconic impassive look. You, one yelled at him, pointing a finger. Get out of our way, fool. We have a mission to complete. Damn, we were not told this guy would appear. Didn't you hear what he did in Kiri? We are all going to be slaughtered. It was not very surprising that there was gone be a coward in the group. Fear was a beast that could bring anyone to their knees. When one was consumed with fear, there was no moving forward. Shut up. That was the leader, silencing everyone. Remember your training. Regardless of how powerful he is still a man, and can be defeated. Hi, was a resounding response the leader got from his men. Uchiha Naruto, you should not have crossed our paths. But I cannot say that it is a coincidence that you just happened to appear when we are on our way towards Otogakure. Could it be that you are behind the village? Our Tsuchikage was suspecting something of this, but he could never prove it. Apparently, the leader was a smart man. Naruto was quick to notice this. Interesting, he stated, speaking his first words since appearing. It appears you are not stupid. But I have little interesting in indulging your curiosity. It is fine then. We can just make you tell us what we want. We have been training vigorously over the past years. We were being prepared for such situations. History will not be repeated. What your Yondaime did back then will not happen again. The man seemed confident in his words. The others seemed to nod in agreement with him. Naruto took out the three-pronged kunai he knew they would recognize. You mean when he used his thing? He could see their gazes harden. Minato became famous by slaughtering a bunch of weak fools wearing Iwa headbands. Well, you could say that it was genocide he committed. Interesting, isn't it? A simple leaf was able to grind down a rock into nothing but sand, which was blown away into the desert of Suna. That must have been one hell of an entertaining show to watch. To add on to that, he was smiling. Bastard, it seemed they were ready to bisect the blonde. Don't be tricked into losing our calmness, the leader soothed calmly. Battle formations, within an instant, they readied themselves. Surrender now or face your doom. But I would rather if you did not surrender so we can humiliate you. Naruto was no longer smiling. He was now looking at the army before him in disdain. I have already thrown myself before an army and attacked it head on, so I have done something like this, and slaughtered everyone who was lucky enough to be on the path of my jutsu. Since I have done this, I no longer have interest in doing it again. He paused for a moment. How should I go about this without? Hundreds of kunai went flying towards him. He did not move though. Shinra Tensai, he repelled all the kunai away from him. The blast was not that powerful. He had only put little power behind the jutsu. Its purpose was to repel the kunai so that he was not pierced. It would be annoying to be dodging the weapons with pure speed. Given their numbers, he would not have managed to dodge them all. Damn it. What the hell was that? One of the men yelled, looking straight at the blonde before them. Naruto was still folding his hands across his chest. He had not looked threatened, even for a second when the kunai went flying towards him. And to show why he was not threatened, all the projectiles flung towards him were repelled by some force. This is not in the bingo book. I don't know about any technique that can do that. What we know is the Sharingan, Mokuten and ridiculous fire jutsu. This was not in his bingo book entry, another stated. Naruto had been put inside Iwa's bingo book, but it had yet to be shown anyone outside of the village. In fact, the new bingo book was only available to a select shinobi. Don't lose focus. If we do that, we will be Kiri all over again. I do not need to remind you that Iwa does not need another humiliation in the hands on Konoha. This will not do well to our image and pride. No matter, we have to stand firm. The battle has yet to even begin. The leader of the army stated in a steel voice laced with full confidence. There did not seem to be any hidden fear within the man. If I wanted to, I would play with you while I break down your confidence and fighting spirit. But that will require me to sweat a little over you. I don't want that. He paused for a moment, watching their reaction. Before he could say anything, the leader spoke again. You sound confident that you can deal to us the same damage you did to the Yondaime Mizukage's army. But let me assure you, we are not weak like those mist shinobi. We are strong, and it is us who will break your confidence and parade around the world with your head. There was a sick grin on the man. He was already picturing Naruto's head on his hands. Really, the man should differentiate between a dream and a fantasy. Stronger than Kiri. I see. I guess you will be guinea pigs then. His Susanoo flashed to life and stood tall, with him inside of it. He did hand seals simultaneously with his Susanoo. Tengai Shinsei. It was then that the sky became dark, and something blocked the path of the sun. Clouds had already formed above the army. They all looked up, sensing something. A sense of dread began to fill them as something big seemed to be coming down towards them. No one moved or said anything. The feeling in their guts just could not allow them to do anything other than stare into the heavens, and waited. What the hell? One of the men yelled as a large meteorite appeared above them. The thing was ridiculously huge. There was no way of stopping such a thing. They simply could not believe what they were seeing. This was one of the things that you did not just dream of, even in your nightmare. Who could have thought that a large meteorite could come down from the sky? It was just ridiculous thinking about it. Holly, another muttered, falling down on his knees. This was unbelievable. They were not even expecting to clash with Uchiha Naruto. But even so, they had been alerted that they could clash with him, thus every known abilities of his was drilled into their heads. But there was nothing about this. This was not even ninjutsu. Perhaps they were in some sort of genjutsu. Someone seemed to have the same line of thoughts with him. Is this real, or are we in some Sharingan genjutsu? It was possible for the genjutsu of the Sharingan to trick them. The Dujutsu was notoriously known for its power genjutsu. What he was seeing just did not seem real. It was unbelievable. This had to be an illusion. It feels real. Yes, it is real. This is no genjutsu, he was a censor. If it had been a genjutsu, he would know regardless of how powerful it may have been. It was real, and the bastard blonde had pulled it. He had felt his chakra spike considerably when he was going through hand seals. But it was perhaps nothing compared to how much chakra the blonde had. This is ridiculous. We can't outrun this thing. It is too big for any of our jutsu to destroy it. Is this even ninjutsu? There was one thing common in all these men who spoke: fear. The thing was getting closer, and even though they could not outrun it, they started to run around in all directions. One man in the midst of others knew that they could not outrun this thing. He glared murderously at Naruto. Bastard, you will kill us all. Even you can't survive this. You said you were stronger than Kiri. This is something stronger than what I did in Kiri. Let us see if you can survive this. I highly doubt it though, but if you do survive, you will be crippled, emotionally and physically, Naruto responded as his Susanoo disappeared. Don't complain. You said you would humiliate me, you said you were not weak. If you are strong, you stand firm. You will burn in hell for this. Naruto had already opened a portal beneath him. If I do go, I will ensure to be your king in there, and I will make you miserable. He was gone after that. A bunch of earth jutsus were thrown into the fray as the large meteorite crashed down the ground and crushing everything beneath it. Its crash shook the entire Fang country and also in the Sound country. Some in the Fire country felt it given that it had happened close to the borders of the country. It took a while for everything to settle down. In the land of toads, Jiraiya had wide eyes and he was shaking slightly. He had been dangerously close to the things since he had been moving with the Iwa army in a close distance. He had been using his camouflage jutsu to hide from sensors. He had done a good job in hiding, and Naruto appeared. He had moved a bit closer so that he could see things perfectly. But Naruto had just done something that was impossible. He had never seen anything like it before. He had lived past 2 wars, and nothing had come close to what he had seen today. Had it not been for the toads, he may also have been crushed. The sage toads looked at the Sannin worriedly, as they knew the blonde had the power to change the world. And without doubt, he was going to change it. Naruto appeared above the large rocks that had been part of the meteorite he had pulled down into the atmosphere. It had crashed down and broken into some pieces, large pieces in that matter. It did not do any good to the surrounding landscape. Naturally, the blonde smiled looking down at the destruction. This is beautiful. It would have been even more beautiful if I had used it on a strong foe. His eyes narrowed at his right as he sensed some chakra. His eyes could see very well. There were about 50 survivors. They must have buried themselves underground, he thought, going into a distance where they could see him. It was applaudable that they had survived. The leader of the group was amongst them. But none looked to be in a position to fight. See, Commander, is T that man a god or a normal shinobi? The fear from the voice could not be hidden from the voice of the trembling man. I don't know, but he is not normal, the leader responded in a defeated tone, laced with fear. His former confident tone was all but a memory. In one swoop, the confidence was gone. But for somehow, it seemed to return as he forced himself to stand up. But we are still alive. We will fight until we are dead. His previous fear was all gone. It seems there is one strong-willed one, Naruto stated looking down at the survivors. It is unbearable for a leader to watch all his men die in front of him while there is nothing he can do to stop it. What are you getting at? The leader did not have a good feeling about this. Most of your men are dead already. There are only 50 left now, and I will make you watch them perish helplessly. Naruto raised his right hand. Before the man could figure what was going on, a black hole formed under him and it sucked him inside of it. He should be in a perfectly little world where he can watch everything. Monster. You will pay for this. Naruto was not fazed. Very unlikely, he responded calmly. For the second part of this test, I should try another impossible feat, he muttered before holding out both his hands. Chibaku Tensai, he said as a black sphere went up to the sky. This one will do. The ground began to shook with earth chunks, regardless of the size, they began to be lifted up into the air. The remaining 50 were also lifted up into the sky as the black sphere pulled everything towards it. They could do nothing to stop the flight as more rocks piled up into the sphere to create a large ball of rocks in the sky. The thing stood high above the sky in a size that almost rivaled the one of the meteorite he had pulled down earlier. It looks nice when you are the one making it, Naruto said to himself looking above the sky. Next time I should make one doubling the size of this one if I am making only one. He paused for a moment trying to think if he could leave it there in the sky. He decided against that. His perfect Susanoo flared to life in seconds and flapped wings before jumping into the sky in a movement that caused a shockwave to strike where it had been standing. The ground shook because of its takeoff, but Naruto did not mind all that. The Susanoo got hold of its blade as it reached its target. The sword was swung in a blur, something that was unbelievable because of the size of the Susanoo. The sword hit its target with so much power that seemed to distort the air around it. The Chibaku Tensai was split in half by the monstrous Susanoo, and it began to break apart. Naruto deactivated his Susanoo and looked up as it rained rocks. He watched it all for a few moments until it settled down and the ground became still. He snapped his fingers and a portal opened above him, and a shaken man fell down. Report to Onoki what you have seen. he stated, turning around to leave. I don't take orders from you, the man snarled furiously. Naruto turned around to face the man. In a blur he appeared before him and kicked the man hard across his chest, sending him flying away into a considerable distance. By the time he hit the ground, he was out, cold. I wish there was more of them to test more jutsu. But there weren't any more of them for him to test his jutsus on. But it was no trouble, more opportunities like this were to surely come up in the future. He would use them effectively well to test things. He could not use them test his limits since they were not worthy of it. He would dance with the cages soon. As soon as Onoki hears of this, he will be bubbling with anger. The world would know of it soon. It was another humiliation in the hands of Konoha. The villagers would not like it one bit, so will that stubborn fool. But he was not worried about anything. Naruto looked up into the sky, the atmosphere had really settled down. With all that he had done, the earth had taken a beating, but it had calmed down. The piles of rocks and holes were still present. It was a sight that was somewhat exciting for one who loved the thrill of a battle. Despite everything, he had not battled anyone. He could not call dropping a large meteorite on a bunch of Iwagakure shinobi fighting. That had been the usual order of his training. He had accustomed himself with the Rinnegan and all its powers before he even awakened. Madara had more knowledge with other things, but he had also done his research for find more information. It was not only the Rinnegan that he had knowledge of, he also was adept to most if not all known abilities of the Mangekyo Sharingan. The Mangekyo alone was a very powerful weapon. It could do things that were extraordinary. Perhaps Madara was right to say the eyes were blessed. A swirling vortex made him stop looking at the sky and at the vortex. He was already familiar with Obito's Kamui. He could never mistake the man's presence with anything. He had also almost forgotten that he had to settle a score. With the masked Uchiha, almost being the key word. You are here, Naruto said lightly, folding his hands across his chest. It seems you have been busy here, Obito said, looking around the place. He went back to Naruto's statement. I thought I would save you the effort to look for me and present myself to you. Naruto looked at Obito, straight into his yes. He was not surprised to see the man armed with a gunbai on his back and a new mask that showed both his eyes. The Rinnegan was also not surprising. You seem well prepared for a battle with me. Didn't Zetsu tell you that I would not be fighting you? He did not mention anything about the Rinnegan. It did not really matter to him if the man had the eye or not. So you are aware that I have been speaking to Zetsu, yet you continued to trust him. You even handed him the Rinnegan, and by that look it seems you were expecting him to give it me, Obito stated calmly. He was a little surprised of this. He had not suspected that the blonde could think about something like that given how much he seemed to trust Zetsu with everything he owned. You never lost contact with Zetsu. You have always been speaking to him, even before I met Madara. He also can go anywhere he likes and you can do the same. Who is not to say you met every now and then? Naruto paused for a moment. I trust Zetsu with the things that truly belong to me. I know he will never put anything that belongs to me at risk. Anything I have use off, he will not touch. But you should have known that already. The former Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi is not so stupid after all. I had been thinking you could be easily manipulated. Zetsu had done well to befriend you and he did so much that you could even trust him enough to pose as you, Obito stated in a smooth tone. He seemed to speak in a mocking tone when he started talking, but it changed as he went on. I am beyond manipulation, Naruto responded simply. But you should not think that Zetsu is loyal to you. He only speaks to you because it serves the purpose of his master. You are a fool to think you are beyond manipulation, especially since you lived with him when you were a little boy who was looking for affection. He gave you the affection you needed and was like a hero to you as he gave you the power to protect yourself, and something which you needed the most, family. I have to say, Madara did play the part of a grandfather better than I would have thought. Perhaps I ought to give him an award the next time I see, the last part was said in a thought. But it was said loud enough for Naruto to hear it. Naruto's lips twitched into a small, a bit cruel smile. There should be no reason to smile. The reality is that you were a little emotional boy who was broken because Konoha hated him. You could have been easily manipulated by anyone at that time. It is a bit amusing that Madara asked you to be Hokage of the very same village he saved you from, and the village you despise. Obito had his own smile as he spoke, but it was hidden by his mask. You are indeed correct, I was just a little brat who needed some love, and I have you to thank for all that. You were the one who made the Kyuubi attack Konoha. But then again, I would not have been standing here, Naruto responded calmly, his smile never fading as he spoke. Don't give me all the credit. I really wished Minato-sensei had survived, he was a good person. However, even if you had still gotten both your parents, Madara would have still come to you, Obito replied. The smile he had could be seen through his eyes. I see, Naruto responded shaking his head. Well, I guess it is not too surprising. He paused for a moment. It does not change your punishment though. But before that, let us look at this. You say I was just a little brat who could be easily manipulated when Madara took me in. What about you then, Obito? He saved your life and had White Zetsu gossip all about his grand plan. When you wanted to leave, he told you that you would return. And you did return. But that was after you had watched your best friend pierce your girlfriend through her chest by his prized jutsu. Poor love-struck Obito was so heartbroken at Rin's death that he lost all control and slaughtered those around him, before returning to Madara to request that he be trained in the ways of the Moon of the Eye plan. Madara was quite effective despite being at that age. I mean, he had manipulated those Kiri shinobi and set up everything so that Rin could be killed and you would watch that happen. I have to admit, I could have never planned anything like that myself. Poor little Obito did not have the heart to kill Kakashi. But he could not live without his girlfriend. He could not live without his beloved Rin. Rin was all that mattered. When she was gone, poor little Obito snapped and kneeled before awaiting Madara. My grandfather must have been pleased to see all things work according to his plan. I have grown tired of this useless talk. I will rid of you and prepare to the Moon of the Eye plan, Obito stated after a few moments of silence. He had not commented on anything the blonde had said. There was no lie in anything the blonde had said, a part of him knew that. Don't you mean you want to rid of me so you can finally be with Rin? So you can finally get that kiss you always wanted from her? Do you know what would be amusing? It would be if Kakashi had stolen her first kiss. Naruto never stopped giving his small, cruel smile. Despite the lack of outward physical reaction from Obito, he knew the man was having some emotional troubles. But let us get this over with. Naruto rushed towards Obito in full speed. He appeared in front of the masked man and attempted to punch the man straight to the face, but his punch phased through the man. Just as it did, Obito suddenly caught Naruto's hand on his wrist. The blonde merely smiled though. Before Obito could figure out why the blonde was smiling, a shock of electricity hit him from his hand throughout his body. Had he been a normal person, he would have surely been fried. The electricity Naruto had released was very much powerful. It could be rated as a rank. And a normal shinobi would be paralyzed for a few moments. But Obito was only paralyzed for a second, before jumping away from the blonde. Naruto did not attempt anything. You have armed yourself with the Rinnegan and the Sharingan. But, as Madara told you, the true power of the Sharingan is locked when both eyes are used. You cannot use the true power of your Sharingan because it is missing its other half. You cannot handle the power of the Rinnegan, that is why you only have one. But because you only have one eye, you cannot use its full power. Your Mokuton is also half-cooked. Your power is not enough to match mine, the Rinnegan does little to change that. Naruto charged at Obito again. He attempted a kick at the man, but Obito was equal to his speed, he jumped away for avoid the blow. Naruto moved faster again, and formed a Kaiten Rasengan. He disappeared in a blur of speed and appeared in front of Obito. The Rasengan seemed to phase through his chest, but before it could that completely, it disappeared. The result was Obito's cloak blowing up on his chest where Naruto had hit with his Rasengan. Obito jumped away from the blonde, again. You see, Obito, I have studied Kamui for a long time now. I studied it from both your eyes. Using my own Sharingan, I have discovered that both your worlds and Kakashi are connected. But it should be obvious given that they are your eyes and it is the same technique. I could never enter your dimension because my Mangekyo could not. But, my Rinnegan could. All I needed to do was for you to use Kamui with my Rinnegan activated twice to be able to invade into your dimension. I don't have to explain to you how I was able to hurt you. I am also positive that you can also invade my dimension since your Sharingan has those capabilities, Naruto explained lightly. That still means nothing. I had expected you to have figured out the workings of my jutsu. It is no surprise to me that you can counter it, Obito responded, not too concerned by this development. As expected from a student of Madara, Naruto responded calmly. You cannot defeat me, Obito. I can counter everything you throw at me. Both our Rinnegan's make ninjutsu useless. How do you suppose you can defeat me? I have that sorted. I don't have to tell you, I just need to show you. With that, Obito disappeared in a blur and appeared before Naruto. He swung his gunbai towards the blonde, but the attack seemed to be a farce as the gunbai phased through the blonde. Just as the gunbai passed, a sharp root appeared out of nowhere and rushed to pierce through Naruto. But the blonde did a quick Shinra Tensai to repel the attack. Obito was not moved as he seemed to have become intangible again. He moved back from the blonde, but just after that, large trees sprouted from the rock beneath Naruto. Naruto quickly disappeared in a burst of speed. I already told you, Obito, I will not dance with you. You are not my equal. You are nothing more than a mockery to those of us who have both Senju and Uchiha DNA. You don't even deserve wield Madara's Rinnegan. Nagato was able to use it well, that is why he never told you to take the eyes from him. He knew that you could not. Naruto paused for a moment. I know that should I kill you, you might sacrifice your right eye to use Izanami to rewrite the reality. You may even do it as Madara did when he was killed by Hashirama. What do you plan on doing then? Obito almost sounded interested in actually hearing the answer from Naruto. But of course he was not. The blonde was being awfully talkative today. He had said more words to him than he had ever said before. Perhaps the blonde was in a good mood. Naruto answered, anyway. Even though he knew Obito was not interested. I will deactivate your Sharingan, permanently, and I will seal the Rinnegan to ensure that you don't use it. I have already told you that I don't plan on fighting you. So, I will take away all your weapons and then talk with you. Ensuring that you cannot use your Mangekyo will come at a cost. It is not possible to do something like that. And even if it was, it would cost you to deactivate your Sharingan, permanently like mine. It is possible. Even though I expected Zetsu to give you the Rinnegan, do you think that I would leave it as it was without tempering with it? I do think that Zetsu knows I did something, he may not have told you. You are rather talkative, today, Obito said, trying to figure out what the blonde had done to the Rinnegan that gave him confidence. He was curious, it could be tricky and possibly spell something bad for him. He was not going to take any chances. Perhaps if he stalled for some time the blonde would tell him what he did and he would be given enough time to work around the problem. He could not solve what he did not know. You think so? Naruto said, holding out his right hand. He had not noticed that he had been talking much more than he usually did with Obito. Well then, let us get with this started again. The blonde then walked towards Obito slowly. The masked Uchiha did not move an inch. He merely held his gunbai on his right hand firmly as the blonde made his way towards him. Just when Naruto had gotten close to him, Obito swung his gunbai across Naruto in a speed that made it impossible to dodge, even more to the fact that Naruto was very close to him. Obito knew that the blonde had not expected him to attack, and he could have used the same tactic as before when he allowed the gunbai to phase through him. The gunbai smacked Naruto in the face and sent him flying away. But Naruto flipped several times in the air before landing down the ground. You are being a bit hasty in your attack all of the sudden. I just wanted to get close to you for a few seconds, Naruto stated, but Obito was not listening, he rushed towards the blonde in fast speeds. When he had gotten close to Naruto, his eyes locked with Naruto's. Naruto merely smiled. Shinra Tensai, Obito was not blown away like the last time. But Naruto was not done. As the attack was still blowing, he brushed off the hair on his right eye and revealed it to Obito. Unlike the left, which was the Rinnegan, the right was just a Mangekyo Sharingan. Naruto held a single hand seal. The right Mangekyo spun around wildly for a few seconds while Obito was frozen in place. He could not move for a second. What the hell? Obito thought, trying to move. He was intangible, he could not have been touched by anything. But he could feel that he had lost his intangibility. The vision on his right eye became blurry before disappearing and he found his movement again. He jumped away from Naruto. He could see that it was the same with Naruto, his right eye had closed. 2. Kill the other Mangekyo, I have to sacrifice my own. But I need you to use it while you had eye contact with mine. Naruto responded, allowing his hair to fall into place. It was actually real. His Sharingan was no longer activated. He tried activating it, but nothing happened. He just could not activate it. But if Naruto sacrificed his right eye, it would weaken him. He did not think the blonde was capable weakening himself. Naruto was proud of his power. He could not sacrifice it even if it meant killing him. What did you do? He already knew the answer, but this was just unreal. His whole fighting stance was based on his intangibility. He always made battle strategies based on the ability of his right eye. Without it, he would have to change his battle plan. But he would not be the one to have lost something. Naruto also lost his right eye. I took away your right eye at the cost of mine. But don't think I have lost one of my eyes. I replaced my eternal Mangekyo with my original eyes. I replaced it this morning. But this means that I only have one remaining eye from my originals, but it did not matter anyway. He could take back the eye he replaced this morning later on after all this. Moving about with half power of his power would not do well with him. Obito gritted his teeth. He would have to do with the Rinnegan only. On the good side, Naruto could not use his Susanoo with just one of his eyes. But he did not know about the Rinnegan. Still, both could not use their full power, which was good for him. I had certainly not expected things to turn out this way. You had planned for this more than I had thought, he admitted quietly. Now then, shall we get to the other part? Naruto held out his right hand. He formed a Rasenshuriken and began to charge towards Obito. He then threw the jutsu towards Obito, who had tried to move away before he threw it. But the jutsu moved a faster that would require one to be fast as a Raikage to dodge it. Without his intangibility, he could not let it phase through him. It made him realize how he relied too much on his Sharingan power. He had never thought that he would lose it one day. He also could not dodge it because of the speed. Another thing that had made it impossible to dodge was that Naruto had closed the distance between them before throwing the jutsu. He knew that the jutsu was powerful, so he was forced to use the Rinnegan to absorb the jutsu. But the fact that Naruto had said he did something to the Rinnegan made him hesitant, but he was left with little choice. Gakido, he held out both his hands. He never saw the smirk on Naruto's face. He did see it after he had absorbed the jutsu, but the blonde was already holding a hand seal. To activate everything, I needed you to absorb my chakra by using the Rinnegan. We can begin the main show now. Chakra receivers sprouted around Obito's body, this left him immobile and frozen. When did this happen? Naruto ignored the question. He moved closer to Obito and removed his mask. He jumped back to get some distance. Are you being rhetorical? He finally responded. Obito gritted his teeth. If you could do this from the beginning, why did you even sacrifice your Sharingan? I just wanted to take away your prized eye and I was interested in seeing if the jutsu really worked. See, I had yet to try it before. Naruto stopped before continuing. Let us introduce the character of this play. He snapped his fingers and a portal next to him. A woman at the same height of Naruto stepped out, looking a bit nervous. She looked straight at the man in front of her as if she had not seen Naruto. Obito. What is going on? What happened to you? Rin. A wide-eyed Obito stuttered. He quickly recognized the concerned tone he had missed so much from her. It could not have been a genjutsu, the Rinnegan could tell him that. Genjutsu did not work on with the Rinnegan activated. It was not sealed as Naruto had said. And no, you are dead. Rin looked confused. What are you talking about, Obito? Are you referring to the incident with Kakashi? No, you are dead. I saw you, I held your corpse in my hands after you had been killed. Rin walked over to Obito and hit him on his forehead. She smiled at him. Don't talk like that, she seemed to be scolding him like she usually did when they had still been a team. Naruto interrupted the show by pulling Rin towards him. The sound of chirping birds that Obito remembered too well came to life. Don't think that this is just one of Zetsu's clones. You see, Obito, as your Rinnegan can tell you, she is quite alive. You allowed me to take these eyes so that I can see everything clearly. You knew that if I did not have the Rinnegan I would merely assume that she was just a clone, not the real thing. Obito gritted his teeth, glaring down at the chirping birds on Naruto's right hand. Naruto did not deny it. The Rinnegan gives you a precise view of reality. Yes, nothing can be hidden from the Rinnegan, it sees all truth, these are the eyes of legend after all. How? Naruto knew what Obito was asking. Everything looked real back. Kakashi killed Rin, he failed to keep his promise to protect your precious woman. Even more to it, Minato was not there when there was trouble. As always, I do believe this is the reason you had Kurama attack Konoha. After venting out your anger, you held her corpse, you smelt the stench of her blood. Yes, she was dead. You never dared to think that it was a genjutsu you had your Sharingan activated, so did Kakashi. Are you saying that the incident that happened long ago was a genjutsu? Not at all, Naruto responded, shaking his head slightly. It was real, and so is this. Life and death is in the hands of the Rinnegan, you should not forget that. Who brought her back? I don't know. Naruto shrugged. This is how it happened back then, isn't it? Naruto held out his right, which was still crying in a heap of chirping birds. He had still managed to hold the jutsu while he talked to Obito. He moved to strike Rin through her chest. The woman had wide eyes at this, just like last time. Obito could not have that. Even though Naruto's chakra was restraining him, he still managed to push it back for a moment. Naruto was only amused when Obito jumped in front of him to take the blow through the chest. He had expected the Uchiha to do something like that. The Chidori pierced through his chest, but he was still alive. I knew you would do something like that. Obito only glared. Rin went to him, giving him that look of worry she always did. Back then, he had always insisted that he was fine, but how could he say it now? Are you alright, Obito? But before she could say anything else, or he could muster a response, an orange blade pierced through her back. And her eyes became wide again. This is the second time you have failed to save her. You are a failure, Obito, pathetic even. Back then you blamed Minato for not being on time to save her. Yet you were alive, why didn't you save her? Even now, she is going to die, who are you going to blame for your failure? Will this only steal your resolve to initiate Tsuki no Mi? If so, have you forgotten that you can't do anything? If that was not enough, Naruto ripped her apart, but not before driving his right hand back through her chest, removing her heart. Obito could only watch in horror, as Naruto crushed Rin's heart like it was anything. Naruto then made sure that nothing of her was left. When he was done, he kicked Obito like a dog on his chest, leaving the Uchiha to fall down on his back. Poor Obito. His girlfriend was accidentally killed by his best friend, his sensei could not save her, neither could he. And so with her death, he wished to create another world where she could be alive. You also wanted Kakashi to live in this new world because despite everything, he is still a friend to you. What a cruel and kind child you are. Obito gritted his teeth. He was out of options, but, when Madara returns, he will end up killing you. Even if I die now, Naruto crashed his foot on the Uchiha's chest, shutting him up. Don't think too far, Obito. I have not yet done anything. I thought this would be enough to punish you, but it is not. I will save your soul, for now. When I become God, I will revive you, and then take you back to the beginning. I will make you watch Kakashi kill Rin over and over again. I will make you experience what she felt when it happened. You will experience how she wished you could save her, how she was disappointed that you allowed yourself to be killed and left her alone. You will watch her die, and each time I will make you feel helpless, I will make you beg for me to stop it or save her. Well, that was certainly worth all the trouble, Naruto stated looking down at Obito's corpse. He felt oddly happy and a bit more alive with Obito now dead. The trouble and his sacrificial of his right eye had been worth it. Akatsuki was dead at the moment. But there was still Kisame. He was just one man, so he could be handled as time went on. I have to agree with you. That was certainly interesting. I had never thought I would see Obito looking like that, Kabuto stated as he appeared a bit away from Naruto. It was a good thing to keep his distance away from Naruto. That is until he played down his card. Kabuto, Naruto said turning to face the man. I am not very surprised to see you here, he stated looking straight at the man before him. I was supposed to have killed you some time ago. But it seems like that you are like your master, Orochimaru. But I will make sure that I remove you. My Naruto, there is no need to be hasty. Kabuto said, never grinning as he went through hand seals. It would not be well for his health if he did not do an insurance to ensure that Naruto did not move towards him. The blonde could kill him, and he was not looking forward to that. He had escaped death once, he would rather not be in a place where he had to escape death. He did the Edo Tensei, which Naruto quickly recognized by the hand seals as he had done. He was a user of the jutsu, he could very recognize it. A coffin sprouted from the ground and stood still in front of Kabuto. When it opened, Uchiha Madara could be seen, with his eyes still closed. It took a few moments before the man's eyes snapped open and he stepped out of the coffin. He looked down at his hands to see his current state of body before looking around. I had thought either Obito or Naruto would revive me using the Rain Tensei. But it does not matter anyway, the man muttered looking around the place. This landscape does bring back some memories. Obito is currently dead, he has not been dead for more than an hour, Kabuto reported with a smug grin on his face. And I don't think your grandson would have revived you since he does not follow your footsteps. Who are you? Madara asked, narrowing his eyes at the former subordinate of Orochimaru. He could solve being revived in this state. But it was a little surprised to see that he was revived in this state. But nothing was out of plan. The fact that Obito was dead did not surprise him at all. I am Yakushi Kabuto. I have been working with Obito over the past months, Kabuto responded, giving the legendary Uchiha a slight bow. Madara said nothing. His eyes moved until they were locking with Naruto's. They seemed to be on a staring contest. Naruto did not seem the slightest surprised to see his grandfather brought back to the living world. But Madara was the first to speak. You certainly are my grandson, those were the words he could say to the blonde. I had expected that I would be seeing you again, grandfather, Naruto stated calmly. He turned his eyes to Kabuto. Why did you this? Nagato is dead, so is Obito. And you don't like me very much. I have no place to hide, but with him I can even the score, Kabuto replied with a smug look on his face. He held his ace now. He had stayed with Obito long enough to obtain some valuable data that would be beneficial to his research. But with his benefactor dead, he needed someone else to back him up before Naruto made his move. You think you can control Uchiha Madara? Foolish child, he did not seem angry or anything. I have allowed you to live long enough. Are you forgetting something, Naruto? If you kill me, the Edo Tensei will not be undone, and I am sure you do not want your powerful grandfather walking about the nations, Kabuto spoke in a smooth tone, while Madara watched everything with an unreadable look on his face. He knew that Naruto would not care for such thing. It was a matter of how he would deal with Kabuto. I do not care about that, grandfather can live, he and I have a score to settle. You will die here, but he did not seem like he was going to attack Kabuto. Naruto turned to his grandfather. Zetsu should be making his appearance in a few seconds. Naruto was proven right as Zetsu appeared after a few seconds. He did not seem to side with anyone though, as he appeared from a distance away from the two Uchihas. However, both Naruto and Madara knew who the thing was loyal to. This is certainly interesting. I cannot say that I am surprised to see you, Madara. Well, I would have revived you rather soon given the situation in this world. Your presence is quite needed, and I have no one to call an equal, only you have what I have. Naruto stated, repeating what he had already said, walking towards his grandfather with an impassive gaze. He then sat down on one of the rumbles, looking straight at Madara. This is to be expected, Madara stated, folding his hands across his chest. He was not the least surprised that Naruto expected this and was not even showing a tiny bit of surprise. In fact, he seemed a little bit excited by this. But that was also to be expected. Well, at least you are not a failure like him, he stated, referring to Obito, who had his soul ripped away from him by Naruto. I was never a failure to begin with. But if the compliment is coming from you, I will take it, not that I have little doubt of my abilities, he paused for a moment before going on. I have to say, it feels a little good. Madara did not comment on that. I would have liked it if I was brought back using the Rinnegan. But I guess it can't be helped. He could not feel his blood in this body. He wanted his real body. In that state he could feel pain, a body that could get tired. An immortal body would not even do it if he wanted to become the Jubi's Jinchuriki. Don't complain, Madara. You could not have been brought back at a better time than this. Obito is already dead, your eyes are waiting for you, you just need another pet to give you a new body, Naruto explained lightly. Well, he was certainly not going to do that for him, even if he had the power to do so. It should not be a problem for him to find a pet. And Naruto had no Biju inside of him, he was not late for anything. It would have been a little troublesome if the blonde had taken any of the biju. You are giving them without a fight, I expected that. You are bored without any equal after all. Naruto nodded. I can't fight at full power with anyone. And I have grown tired of throwing useless jutsu around. I am sure you would also be bored if you had no one you could call an equal. I had Hashirama during those days. He certainly did best me, he was not even the slightest bitter about the fact that Hashirama could defeat him, even with perfect Susanoo. Hashirama possessed a ridiculous amount of chakra that he was not afraid to say was more than his. If Naruto did not take his training lightly, he could have certainly grown to possess chakra comparable to his former best friend. Yes, you did. It is a pity that he is not here. I want to fight him too and see what he can do exactly, Naruto stated. He had entertained the thought of fighting the legendary Senju. And if he were to be honest with himself, the thought excited him. Hashirama never disappoints. Well, you could bring him back if you want to. He had no doubt that Naruto could pull out the Edo Tensei. Hashirama's corpse was still sealed in Konoha. The blonde could access it and do what he pleases. It would certainly be a blast if the three of them gathered for a last dance. Or you could do it. Naruto looked at Kabuto, and then at Madara. Should you not take care of that before we can talk? Madara did not respond in words. His Susanoo sprang to life, and Kabuto found himself being pierced through the chest by one of its blade. Foolish child, he thought he could actually control me. Children are naive to the things that they do not fully understand regardless of how intelligent they are. Naruto paused for a moment before continuing. Now let us get to business. I see the situation in this world has not bettered. Not that I expected it to. In this reality, there will always be conflicts, winner, and losers, and the result will be something like this, he said pointing at what remained of Naruto's jutsus. You have killed some, and those left behind will seek revenge, they will come after you to kill you. No doubt they will die, but the hatred will still remain to those left behind. And it will be an endless cycle of hatred. Naruto was quiet for a few moments. You are certainly correct. There is no way in this world that a human will forget hatred. There will always be evil, yet there will always be good. In a world where the strong and weak exist, there will always be light and darkness and the two are bound to collide. I understand why you chose Tsuki no Mi. Within the Tsukuyomi, there will no chance for evil, or darkness. Infinite Tsukuyomi is the only place to where humans can live in understanding of each other. This was a bit unexpected. Madara never thought that Naruto would understand fully. What he was certain of was that Naruto was not naive, but the blonde had never seemed thrilled about Tsuki no Mi. But. He was also certain that there was a but. There is a flaw in Tsuki no Mi, Naruto stated, firmly. Madara seemed interested. Come on with it then. Hagoromo died despite being the Jinchuriki of the Jubi. You will also suffer the same fate, and when you do, the Jubi will be freed. Since all humans will be trapped within the infinite Tsukuyomi, there will be no one to stop it from doing what it pleases. And I am positive that the Jubi will destroy all humans, trying to retrieve its chakra. And when it does, it will be the end of the human race. Naruto looked up at the skies. Yes, the infinite Tsukuyomi will bring an end to the world. This did not come as a surprise to Madara, he knew everything that entailed Mugen Tsukuyomi, he even taught Naruto about. Nevertheless, he always had an answer for everything. Like you said, Hagoromo died because he was mortal despite all his powers. If I don't wish to die, I have to become immortal. You do not have the answer to immortality, grandfather. Being the Jinchuriki of the Jubi will give you a long life, but you will age like everyone else. And when you do, you will die like everyone else. Being the caster of the infinite Tsukuyomi, you won't be suspended like everyone else. Since you will use nativity of a world of trees, everyone else will be able to live forever due to the life force of the tree. However, you will not. You are the only one who can live in both the genjutsu and reality. There is also something that you forget, we are not the only ones in this world. And even if you do make yourself immortal, you can't be arrogant enough to believe that you will hold back the Jubi for all eternity. The more you use its power, the more its influence over your body grows. I don't suppose you have the answer. I do have an answer to immortality. I will tell you about it when we dance for death. And I don't think whoever planted the Shinju to begin with will be happy about the situation. Naruto said, smiling a little. Oh, It made him proud knowing that he knew more about the world than Madara did. Now, tell me how I came to be. Obito called my mother a rejected Uchiha. I am curious about that. I see, I never told you about it back then. Well, it would have made things a bit difficult if I did, Madara stated, as he too, sat down, away from Naruto. You can start talking now. Only you have that information. Naruto was serious, Madara could tell. I know for certain that you were not interested in anything of this world. You could have never thought of making a child within the world you loathe unless there was a reason behind it. A reason. Yes, there was certainly a purpose for the birth of your mother. When I left Konoha to pursue my dream, I soon realized that time was not on my side. I could not have anyone to take things up for me. If I died without having trained someone to take up Tsuki no Mi in my place, it would be an end to my dream and this reality would continue to corrupt this world. With that in mind, I looked for an Uzumaki woman and swayed her. I have to say, it was not that difficult, especially when she wanted a child badly. I wanted a child of my own because I saw no one capable of initiating my plan. I knew for certain that a child born of me and Uzumaki would be a powerful child. That child would be the one I trained to continue with my plans as my life was coming to an end. I waited patiently for the child to be born, but I was left disappointed when the child turned out to be a girl. A girl was not what I wanted. And so I rejected the woman and her child to look for someone who I could use. Your grandmother also rejected my blood flowing through Kushina's veins. She made sure that Uchiha genes inside Kushina never dominated. I did not really care since I had already rejected them. But I did keep an eye on them from far, just in case something happens. Madara explained lightly, looking straight at his grandson whose expression had not changed as he talked, not even the slightest. I see, so this is why Obito called her the rejected Uchiha. Well, that is understandable, you rejected her after all. Funny, Konoha also rejected me as her hero, Naruto stated, cocking his head. Despite Kushina being useless, you still kept an eye on her. No doubt this was done so that nothing could happen to her. Despite your outward appearance, you would not have allowed your only child to be killed. Madara did not comment on Naruto's words. You must have been mad when Obito called your mother a rejected Uchiha. Naruto did not deny anything. I was angry, a little. But there is nothing to be angry about now since I know for certain that it is the truth. Now go on. After the plan to make a child to take from me failed, I waited for years. That is until I found Obito and shaped him. While at the same time, I knew what was happening to Kushina. I knew she had been made the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. But it did not matter since she possessed a strong life force that she would survive if the Kyuubi was to be extracted from her. When I found out that she was going to have a son, I waited patiently to take you away from her. But of course, she would have been allowed to raise you until I could take over. The night you were born, Obito went on his own and decided to destroy Konoha with the Kyuubi. At that time, he was not aware that Kushina was my child. For Obito, this world no longer mattered, he did not care what happened to it since he had lost his Rin. I could have sent Zetsu to take you after everything. But I wanted to see how you would develop being the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. Despite going out on his way, I still allowed Obito to start with Tsuki no Mi while I worked on you. For the first years I watched your every move inside Konoha. It was not pleasant watching, but it proved to me how cursed this world is. After I had seen enough, I then took you in. I sent Obito away. While teaching you what was necessary, I realized that I should have taken you from Konoha that night the Kyuubi was sealed in you. By the time I took you, I could no longer shape you into a shinobi I wanted you to become. Even with how Konoha treated you, you were a kind child. But that kindness could still be discarded like it was never there. Even if you cared, you can still harm and kill. You are kind just as you are heartless. My death in your hands only intensified this, I was certain of it. I knew for certain that you were capable of ignoring everything around you, even your own feelings. When I saw the kindness in your heart, I knew for certain that you could not become what I wanted you to become. Since I knew you could erase the kindness, I could have shaped you. However, I realized something wrong with you. But I still trained you and allowed Obito to have his fun. If Obito was smart, he could have gathered all the Biju before you got too powerful for him to handle. But he decided to play around and see if my efforts with you were worth it. I did know for certain that you would kill Obito, and I would be revived. Zetsu was also there to ensure that if Obito strayed too far, he would have to be reprogrammed. My idea of you becoming Hokage was to put you into a position where you could see the true colors of this world through your own eyes. Then perhaps we may come to an understanding, but it appears not. Well, I had also planned to fight with you. It would have been boring if I was revived without anyone to rival me. Naruto nodded, calmly. As I said, I would have revived you anyway. It is not just for a battle, but you are useful. We will get to that at a later date. Still, he was not surprised that his grandfather knew him this well. Interesting, Madara stated, curious to how Naruto planned to use him. It does seem our battle will be even bigger than the one I had with Hashirama. Naruto nodded in agreement. What stops me from being excited is that despite being alive, you are still dead. I will be happy when you are not in that state. Naruto had already said he was not going to use the Rain Tensei, so it was no use trying to convince him otherwise. Do you really plan to become Hokage? I wanted to. But my patience with Konoha is wearing thin. Like you said, even if I wanted to, I can still discard it if it becomes a problem for my plans. Naruto stated, rather calmly, still facing his grandfather. You said you noticed something wrong with me, what was it? You see, when I found that I could not manipulate you like I did with Obito, I searched you thoroughly trying to find out how to get you to behave. You were capable of smiling to someone honestly this minute and still kill the same person the following minute. You hated Konoha, yet you could still live in that same village. I told you to become Hokage, yet you entertained the idea of leading a village you so despise. I asked myself, how is this possible? To answer the question, I questioned how you handled your emotions towards Konoha. With how much you loathed Konoha for what it did to you, you could have snapped it burned the village long ago. Yet, you still live there. I was led to realize that you should have really snapped long ago when Konoha was still bullying you or maybe when I told you about your parents. But you did not. This led me to realize that you were different. To stabilize yourself, your emotions, to manage things well in a way that you would not lose yourself and become unstable due to your traumas, you divided yourself into three, Uzumaki, Uchiha and the other one I never saw. You kept Uchiha in the front most of the times, but sometimes Uzumaki took control. The day you could not control him was your birthdays. Uzumaki represents your pain, suffering and your other emotions, while Uchiha has nothing of those. He is just indifferent towards everything, cares for nothing. I do believe that over time, you lost the ability to control this personality and they ended up merging, giving a little light to Uchiha Naruto. The third personality is the one that escaped my eyes, but I know it is there. I do wonder how your mind handles all these. Well, it could be that the third is pulling all the strings tied behind Uzumaki and Uchiha. All that Naruto could say was, interesting. Is something like that even possible? Can someone really form multiple personalities like you? Say. If you did it, then it is possible. You must be bitter about the fact that I am beyond your control, despite the fact that I am here because of you. But that is irrelevant. It no longer matters since we are here. Naruto did not confirm or deny anything about what Madara had said. It is relevant. My failure to control you has led to this situation. You won't just sit back and allow me to capture all the bijoux to initiate my plan. You are going to stop me from doing what I want. This is your world, after all. My world. What makes you say that this is my world? I don't know of its origins. I don't know how everything came to exist in this world. How can this world be mine? It is fine if you don't want to play, Madara stated, waving his hand dismissively. It was obvious that Naruto was not going to indulge on the subject further to lead him into revealing something. Your observation is almost right. But do not make it sound like I have a personality disorder. I have nothing of that. When you say that I have three personalities, you make things a little creepy. Well, guess he was going to talk. As you said, I was a kind child in the beginning, but there was some darkness that lay deep inside of my heart. I have never really given much time to explore it all. I am emotionless when I choose to be. I can deny myself what I feel, even though my heart says otherwise. The fact that I have emotions means that I am human, normal like you. You are not emotionless, you feel excitement, anger, and pride. I also feel those things. What makes us different is that my heart is still capable of loving, unlike yours. And there is also the fact that I can flip a switch to shut down my emotions. I must admit that it has become difficult these days since I have attached myself to others. That is to be expected, Madara responded calmly. He had a feeling that Naruto hated all the emotions he felt. He felt that the blonde no longer wanted to be human. Once you have formed bonds, it is not easy to break them, especially given someone with your background. Despite having me, you were still quite lonely. But I don't think you realized it since you always kept focus on the objective rather than trivial things. It seems so, Naruto conceded. Emotions really do spiral out of control sometimes. And it is a problem for someone young like me who is not experienced. But they do have their uses. They are the easiest way to manipulate people, but you refrain from doing that. I do wonder why though. You are not bound by principles formed in this world, you certainly have no care for morality, yet you don't like manipulating people. Madara looked thoughtful for a few moments before continuing. Even though you may not have different personalities, as I had assumed, there is still something dark inside your heart. You have admitted it to me countless times that your heart is cold. What stops you from manipulating other people? It is not that I don't like the idea, but what I do not like is depriving people of their free will. I am not against manipulation. If it sweets my end, I will engage in it. But free will is something that I respect. However, my concept of free will is quite different from the world's point of view. I will always give options, even if they are limited. This is why if I wanted to initiate the Mugen Tsukuyomi, I would offer it as dinner at the table, and give people a choice to eat it or not. My actions will depend on their choice. That would still not be fair, and who is to say you will not only offer options that will suit you? Let us say for an example, if I put Konoha in the same position as they did to me, if I make them suffer the same torment as I did. I would ask them in the end if they wanted to take revenge for the torment or if they would rather have their tormentor apologize and move on. If they say revenge, you will also tell them that they should have no complaints if you seek revenge because that is exactly how they would react. You do to them what they wish to do to you. Do you plan on doing that to Konoha? Who knows? Naruto merely shrugged. Wouldn't that be fair, though? If you want revenge, then you should not hold any grudges if someone seeks revenge against you. If you kill, you should be prepared to be killed. If you hate, you should be prepared to be hated. This is just the way I see things. It is a win-win for both sides. But it does not end the cycle of hatred. Hatred is something that will be ended easily. I do agree with you that men are vile creatures. If they are not shown the way, they will continue to be evil, even when they know that they are doing wrong. Naruto paused for a moment. He found himself suddenly losing interest in the train of his conversation with Madara. Do you know what is funny, grandfather? What is it? You are so proud of manipulating others that you never saw that someone was also manipulating you. He did not use darkness to manipulate you, no, he used your love. This plan of yours was formed when Izuna died. Even before that, you have lived and trained to protect your little brother. You could have joined with Hashirama before your brother died, but he told you no. If you had joined with him back then, he would have healed Izuna, and things would have turned out differently. Izuna was your love, and when he died you hated reality and chose to seek a world of dreams. Aren't you like Obito in that regard? No, Naruto shook his head. Obito only wanted to live with Rin again, but you truly wish for peace. Perhaps your actions have not been manipulated by your love for your brother. He contradicted his thoughts and answered his own question before disappearing in a flash of yellow. Madara looked at Zetsu. Naruto has developed in a way that I have not thought would be possible. And it seems that he may have already surpassed me. He paused for a moment. Can I assume that he has the Geto Mazo? Zetsu nodded. And I don't think he will allow you to summon it. That is fine, I will just allow him to collect all the bijoues for me. Naruto may be strong, but I know the workings of his own body more than he does. I created his body after all.